"Can I share this table?" asked the one-legged girl to the single dad. Then he said. A storm of dust swirled across the small roadside cafe as the door creaked open, and in that moment the single father, exhausted and defeated, looked up from the half-cold plate he couldn't afford to finish. The world had been sharp to him lately, cuts from every side, bills piling up, dreams fading, and he had begun to believe that kindness had no place left in his life. But when he saw her, balancing carefully on one crutch, her face pale with fatigue yet lit with the faint courage of someone who refused to give up, something inside him froze. The girl, barely 12, stood with a shy tremble and asked the words that would change both their lives. "Can I share this table?" It was such a simple request, yet carrying the weight of 100 silent battles he didn't know she was fighting. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in stories that touch the heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to KH Stories. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. The man nodded, unsure why his voice wouldn't come out. His son, a boy of 7 with large questioning eyes, scooted aside to make space for the girl. She sat slowly, placing her crutch against the table leg, and though she tried to hide it, the pain etched in her expression couldn't be disguised. Her clothes were clean but worn, her hair tied back with a rubber band that looked like it had survived years of use. She clutched a small paper bag in her hand, barely wrinkled, suggesting she carried nothing heavy, perhaps nothing at all except the courage to exist through another day. The father found himself watching her, not out of pity, but because something about her presence felt unusual. Children often carried hope even when the world failed them, but she carried something different, an exhausted hope, a hope that had been kicked and stepped on but still breathed. She placed the tiny paper bag on the table and whispered more to herself than to anyone else. Inside was a single bread roll, dry, hard, but cherished. He looked at his son, who stared at the bread with the curiosity of a child who didn't understand how some people could have so little while others had more than enough. The father swallowed hard, fighting the sting in his chest. He had known hunger, but watching a child try to savor a small, lonely piece of bread broke something deeper. As minutes passed, the cafe's noise blended into a quiet hum. The father glanced outside, where his old motorbike, its paint chipped, its engine coughing like a dying animal, sat alone in the harsh sun. He had been fired 3 weeks ago after missing too many days of work while taking care of his sick son. Since then, every morning felt like climbing out of a deep hole only to fall back in by nightfall. The girl finally lifted her head and their eyes met. There was no bitterness in hers, no resentment, only a quiet acceptance of whatever life threw at her. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he felt the urge to ask her something, anything, just to understand who she was and how someone so young had learned the art of silent endurance. But she spoke first, surprising him. She began eating tiny pieces of the bread, almost as if stretching each bite to last longer. She smiled faintly at the little boy sitting beside him, and in that soft smile, the father saw warmth, a warmth she probably rarely received. The cafe owner, a strict man who hated loiterers, eyed her suspiciously from across the counter. The father noticed it, and something inside him stiffened with protective instinct, though he didn't know why. Then the girl's crutch slipped. She tried to catch it, wincing as she leaned awkwardly. The father reached out quickly, grabbing it before it fell. That moment, their hands almost touching, felt like the universe gently nudging two broken souls together. She whispered a shaky thank you, and he simply nodded, but the gratitude in her eyes lingered like a scar that refused to fade. He asked gently where her parents were, though his voice trembled with fear that he already knew the answer. She hesitated, swallowed, and only said that she lived with someone but often spent her days wandering because being at home didn't feel like a home anymore. That was all she said, but her silence filled in the rest. Poverty, neglect, abandonment. A child forced to survive on scraps of love and crumbs of food. The cafe owner walked toward their table, his irritation visible, and the girl's shoulders immediately sank as though she expected to be scolded.